the fact that probably at this point of time, between as a firm of as a human capital talent, as a service firm, whether it's Sandy, Shefali, myself, Hein, Bill, Dan, we are probably touching close to 100 companies simultaneously. And if you think about this whole piece of, change hits, value shifts, and talent gets disconnected, and you marry that with the fact that CEOs are simultaneously working on an effective shutdown, looking for lead indicators on, where the reopen comes, and simultaneously thinking about, where is the new alpha in all of this. You take something like that and you look at it conceptually versus, I think, what we are privileged to do right now is to go company by company. And I think a very interesting thing that I'm seeing through all of this is what I call the cost of alignment. Because everybody is making an assumption about the world. People are making an assumption on what's going to happen, how much down, how long. It's all assumptions based on a worldview, based on facts. And if you think about, all the world leaders who have the world's best economists, the world's best, medical people, and look at the variability in the decisions they are taking on the same virus with the world's best information, the same game is getting played out in the life of a CEO. And not just the life of the CEO, the ecosystem around the CEO, which is the owners or the shareholders, the executive team, the employees, and the communities. If you take that ecosystem, they're all coming from a set of assumptions. And what we are learning by going company by company across these 30, 40, 50 different organizations simultaneously, I think I'm struck by what I would say cost of alignment. And, so I don't know, Sandy and Shefali, what do you think about that? But the effort that I think a CEO could take in moving fast while taking taking a moment to continuously have a balcony and a dance floor view of these assumptions and counting that cost of alignment. It also tells me, this is a great time to be a human capital practitioner. It's a great time to be a human capital practitioner because everybody who is, I think now, I could be what's that saying about being a, hammer and the whole world is a nail. But anybody who's in the strategy business is playing dice right now, I think. And I think the superpowers that we as human capital practitioners bring is this ability to look at this problem from, the human angle, look at it from our own confirmation biases, look at it from, if you truly believe that human beings look for data to support their beliefs, there has never been a bigger time to look at your belief systems and saying, let me just step out and see what are my belief systems, and as I lead through it. So I find it to be, as a human capital practitioner, a fascinating time. I don't know if this will ever come. I hope this never comes in my lifetime again, but it is a fascinating time to learn. And for us as human capital practitioners to connect our talent of scientifically, looking at these human processes and connecting them to value, because a lot of value is leaking because the ecosystem is not aligned and people are coming from different assumptions. Don't know, guys, what do you think about that? That's my kind of thinking.
So in my simple mind, I was just wondering when you're going to come to the role of human capital, because I am that hammer looking for that nail perhaps. But I think this and people have talked about it. People have talked about the elevation of the CFO and the CHRO through this, because as we went through the shutdown and thinking about what that means, I think the first thing everybody started looking at is cash and costs. The CFO suddenly was, 5-hour conversations with the CEO every day. And then, of course, is the human capital practitioner, because there are some highly tangible things that you have to think about, which is safety and health, etc., of employees or your own self. So I know a management committee where one really critical role is being done by a person who might be, from a COVID perspective, has immunodeficiencies. So the first thing is you start thinking about health and safety of your team, and what are your business plans on continuity, etc. And then it is all about the intangibles, right? It is about the intangibles of making people be aligned in this kind of a space, emotionally, be together as a team, but also the cost of alignment that Sumit is talking about, we suddenly have an experiment going on, which is real time, where you can look at value leaking because of alignment or assumptions being different in a team or in the ecosystem. So it is quite amazing to see the intangibles and the tangible aspects of human capital play out.
Yeah, I think Sumit and Shefali, what you're saying, it as we're working our way through company by company, watching the people kind of exposing their set of beliefs as this is unfolding. I even see it here in the house, where you have different beliefs between the kids on how are they responding to this crisis situation themselves, and what are the beliefs that they have about it. And then when we look at these managers, they're sitting with a set of beliefs, which then cause them to underestimate, overestimate certain things. And if the beliefs that they have, in the case of these companies that we're working with, if the beliefs are off by a lot, then it can be fatal for the company. So if you underestimate the down, which I think most people at this point, they have some data and so forth to deal with the down. But initially they had to forecast what they thought what the down was going to be, and that was rooted in a set of beliefs. And we needed to find a way to help them to put those beliefs out on the table as an individual, but also as a collective in the management team. Because if you don't have those, if that set of beliefs and what is the collection of the shared beliefs, you can end up with a very serious underestimation of the impact that it's going to have. And we've seen a lot of that. And then they underestimate how long it's going to last. And then they overestimate how much it's going to bounce back. And that, those down, across, up sort of describe the cost of COVID. So if we see the cost of COVID, then the question is, how realistic is it? And trying to understand the optimism that is rooted in people's beliefs about it, and the kind of information that they're getting and that they're using. So we're watching now, people are getting better at seeing how far it's going to go down. People are beginning to get a sense of how long it might last. And I think most people that we're talking to are still underestimating, or overestimating rather, how much it's going to come back. So Sumit was asking the question in a workshop this morning, is it actually going to come back this far? And you could feel the resistance in the team to the question, hey, wait a minute. We have a set of beliefs and, we want to be optimistic about this. And I think people do want to be optimistic about it.
Isn't it interesting, Sandy, that we have met in the last 4 weeks. We have done a mobilization effort across 23 companies. And I was just sitting and counting today that only one company, they said that this might be an L. Everybody thinks that by 2021, Jack is back. And I'm thinking, I'm not an economist and I'm not a medical expert. And I read the same newspapers as everybody does. But I find it interesting that, the energy has shifted from this is going to be a quick V over 8 weeks because China shut down on 19th of January and opened on 19th of March, the day before, Chinese New Year Day. So it's 8 weeks, it'll be 10 weeks, it'll be fine. But this whole thing of the medical wave, the economic wave, God forbid, a social wave, I find it interesting that people almost need to and want to believe. And maybe it's true. I'm not saying it's not. But the fact that 23 out of 24 CEOs are saying, it's all going to be okay in 21, I have to now go through an extended 8-9 months of pain and manage this year. Can I write this thing off and say this year didn't exist, 2020 didn't exist? So I see, I see the last 8 weeks, some amount of optimism has got washed out and there is realism coming in. But even now, I think the majority view, and I think maybe human beings need that whole feeling of it's going to be all right, right? And to me, again, the question running through my mind is there a cost of alignment here? Are we setting ourselves up for a surprise, 8 months down the line saying, well, it's not a long bathtub and a U which will come back. It's probably an L. And I need to design my, efforts of bending this L curve up with a new alpha energy as opposed to a cost energy, or am I thinking about it? So anyway, long story short, I was just thinking, we've done 200 meetings across, chairmen, CEOs, executive teams across 23 companies in the last 4 weeks. And I find this pattern fascinating, that irrespective of industry and geography, there is still almost a human need that it's all going to be all right. I don't know what both of you feel about that.
So I do feel that we have to hold on to something which gives us, I wouldn't say optimism, but to feel that, yes, that some things will be okay. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to live. However, a lot of us have also been taught that in leadership. We've been taught the fact that you can, worry only about things that you can control, don't worry about other things. So for the longest time, for I think decades, that's what we've taught our leaders. Right? So I wouldn't be surprised that, people are looking and say, okay, I can't change the medical world, or I can't create a vaccine, but what can I do? What can I do to bend the curve for my company? And that's what, in a sense, they believe they're paid for as well. So think about one or two of our clients who have actually pushed back on us and our stuff, saying that, but this is my job as the CEO, right? To hold on to our beliefs, our plans, and nothing is supposed to be easy. I remember somebody saying, that's why I'm paid. This is part of my role. So in a sense, we've probably taught people that kind of leadership.
Yeah, and and I think I think the V was an expression of optimism. It's going to go down, it's going to come back. The U is an expression of optimism in that our people systematically overestimating how much is going to come back and when it's going to come back. And it's interesting too. Do we see a difference between people who are managing in a public markets context, where the game in many ways is a relative game? How is this business doing relative to that business? And in a private capital game, where you're looking much less at how this business is doing relative to another business, you're looking at how this business is doing relative to the value agenda that was established. And so, and you have some of the businesses we've been working with that are both public and private. And watching the CEOs say, well, listen, relative to all of our peers, we're crushing them. And look at our share price. And then the private owners saying, wait a second, we put the money in, these were the kinds of returns that we wanted. And, based upon the shape of this curve, we've wiped out, this much of the value that we were looking to create. And how quickly are we going to be able to get that back? So two different contexts. And it's interesting too, to look at different management teams and how they think about cost, how they think about cash, how they think about capability. And in one instance, hey, if I cut this cost, my capabilities are going to go down. Or if I understand where the value is, I can move that, this cost and make it fuel for growth over here, if I'm willing to move it. But if I'm not willing to move it, or if I've got a set of beliefs that, and they have, I think, Sumit, you call it an unhealthy relationship with cost. Hey, I'm not touching my costs. I'm not touching my this. I'm not touching my that. As opposed to, wait a minute, where is the value and where is it shifting? And how do I move cash, cost, spend from one area to another? Change hits, value shifts. And how do I redeploy it? And how do I do that in a fingertip feel kind of way? I think it's interesting watching the way different teams are responding to these different, and all of a sudden, Sumit, where it's what is the cost of alignment, and also what is the cost of, you're bumping into a belief that is holding you there. And you're right about, we're seeing people break through it, and it's fun. It's fun to watch them break through it, and how quickly then too people want to kind of take the breakthrough and immediately begin, a planning, tracking, kind of energy on the thing, which it's good to track it, but you want to make sure you're tracking the right thing. Because if we're tracking something and it's built on a belief that is just wrong, then big mistakes can be made.
If I were to think about strands of this conversation, which have the cost of alignment as a theme, the inherent optimism that a leader needs. You became a CEO because you were an optimistic person. And you had the ability to bend this world by the force of your will. Okay? or shape the world. We talk about shaping the curve. It's all about, there is a certain, like, I can turn this thing, optimism, self-belief is the DNA. And I think all of that will be required, by the way, in this crisis, like any other crisis. It is one theme of the conversation for me. The other one is this whole area of cost of alignment. You're not in this thing alone. You can't just go, and two things which are unique. It's the same ecosystem. There are two things I feel which are unique. The first one is the very divisive demands. If I don't know how to explain that, the owners are just, let's say, thinking about value creation and what got wiped out, and the markets may be thinking about relative. The employees have a whole different safety concern, an employment concern. The governments will have a certain completely different demand. The demands are sharp and big and very different. The second thing which I find is the pace of this whole change. This Harari comment we saw today that I can't remember the exact one, Sandy and Shefali, what this, something about
change is accelerated, or yeah.
Well, the world went into fast forward.
The world isn't, so normally when you have an alignment gap, I think things just, it's like they work in slow motion. The value leaks slowly. I don't know if you know the story of that boiling frog, right? If you take a live frog and you put it in boiling water, it jumps out immediately. But if you put him in cold water and you increase the temperature slowly, it just kind of stays there. That's how alignment normally is, which is it slowly leaks out value till it's too late. This time, I feel the alignment gaps are huge and they are fast. It's not like therefore the cost of alignment is big, because you can't let it drift for a while and then catch it and bring it back. And you have to be structured about it. You have to go at it with expertise and not with a touch and feel and management by walking around. And by the way, you don't do that on Zoom very well, I think, management by walking around. So having a structured, detailed process on looking for these alignment gaps, because they are working in warp speed and they are larger than ever before. And I think, seeing this across, these 30, 40 companies has been, I would say personally, a really fascinating experience from a learning point of view. And I also feel a little bit privileged that we have the opportunity to serve, and without sounding too corny, not just these companies, but I think we are serving, 1 million+ employees in these companies by ensuring that at a point of leverage, we are creating that alignment,
And what is the antonym of alignment? Because I'm feeling some dissonance on the cost of alignment. The alignment is the benefit.
Yeah.
What is this the cost of? Because I think, Sumit, you're right on it. I mean,
it's speed, Sandy. It's speed of execution. So what typically happens is, if you're not really aligned, there'll be passive aggressive behaviors, which will come in. Right. So think about your sponsor in the ecosystem, and if the sponsor and the CEO are not aligned and they're not talking about it, and that's the role that you guys are playing, is to surface that. If it wasn't done like the way we are doing, basically the CEOs would nod their head and not do perhaps what the owners or the sponsors or the shareholders want them to do in time.
I think, Shefali, what Sandy is...
Time is the result. I think lost time and speed are the outcome of the lack of alignment, or the alignment is what we're looking for. But when we say the cost of, it's the benefit of alignment, but it's the cost of something else. There's some dissonance in there. and I know dissonance and alignment are not the same, they're not the opposite of one. What is the opposite of alignment? Misalignment? I mean, but misalignment sounds dorky. What is it that we're, because what we're bumping into, Shefali, is the exact point, is we have a clash of beliefs that are rooted in different stakeholders, and that clash of beliefs and making a set of assumptions. And to Sumit's point, these things are fractured and dissonant.
Yeah.
And then the employees are, and then when we're able to create alignment, when you go, whoa, all right, now we're seeing the picture in a very similar way. Now all of a sudden you get this, the world has gone fast forward and your company can go fast forward.
Yeah.
And
It's very interesting. I don't know from a language perspective what that word is, but it's almost from a physics perspective, it's the extra force that you get with, so I mean, it's all, of course I'm laughing because I'm thinking of double here, be the force with you, but that's for me. But it's exactly, that's what coming into my mind. And so that's really interesting, right? This belief world, I have for the last 8-9 years, that's all the work I've done around, surfacing beliefs, because we often say that human beings is like an onion, and right inside the onion, the core part of the onion is identity and values. And that's not something that we'll change very easily. But the beliefs, funnily, are the rules of the values. And we can change it. So I'll give you an example. If I thought my value is that I have to be a great mother, chances are I'm not going to change that value. But what is the rules of being a good mother? So when my kids were really young, I would say between 3 and 6, I won't work because I want to be with my kids. And that's exactly what happened in my life. That was a rule, a belief that I put on a value, right? When my kids were teenagers, if I were to want to spend 3 hours with them, they would probably kill me, right, in a day. So they barely spend 15 minutes with me. So I had to change my definition of how I'm going to measure my value of being a good mother. The energy loss, which we talked about speed, I think there's a lot of exhaustion which happens when two beliefs are fighting. You're thrashing around, you're fighting, and you might not be fighting like the way kids fight, but that's exactly what you're doing. You're holding on to your ego and there's a lot of energy loss, which actually then doesn't help the organization or the human being.
Well, and I think that what I really like that, Shefali, because I think this is what we're watching. Harari is saying that when the world moves into fast forward, all of a sudden there are beliefs that are shattered. So for example, when he's talking about the university that has been talking about online learning, and there's a whole collection of people who have been holding beliefs that say it's not so great and we need the interaction and I don't teach that way. And so, which are these rules?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
These rules are guiding everyone.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, there's no option. We cannot go into the classroom. So that whole thing is shattered and you get a fast forward.
Yeah.
Now, the whole university goes online in 2 weeks. Boom, fast forward. And all of these are opportunities. And so what we are tapping into here are, and as we go, kind of cash, cost, and so on, and we have those sliders, we're asking them, what are the rules? And what are your beliefs? And when they say, oh, look, we've moved over to here. We have decided we're going to over communicate to our employees. Under normal circumstances, you're not going to communicate to people every single day about whatever. we are going to be much closer to our customers, you know, or we are not touching our employees. It's a rule, right? It's a belief. And you know, the thing you said, what I have been feeling, you know, as I'm walking through this is we're saying, you know, people are saying we should do these workshops because I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this and I see a set of beliefs that are going to really hurt us because those beliefs are going to cause us to take action. And you can, no matter of review meetings or this or that, is going to shift until you have addressed the beliefs in these different areas. And what, you know, what we've done is said, shut down. Okay, what is your belief about cost? What is your belief about cash? What is your belief about customer? Bop, 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 bop. And then giving them a chance to express it. And then what we try to do, and it's even a slider, right? We're trying to shift it. And so I think that if this bag that Sumit has described called the cost of alignment.
Misalignment. Let's call it the cost of misalignment.
Yeah, the cost of misalignment, and it is the misalignment of, and you know, we need to find the right word because belief is a word that is going to cause people to freak out, right? We've got to find, there is a misalignment there, and it is these are fundamental misalignments, and I don't know what exactly we want to call that. But to the extent that we can demonstrate shifts in those things, what will follow, what should follow, and what should follow, and I think we're seeing evidence that it is following, you begin to see these fast forward. And so what we should be aiming for, I think, Sumit, in this is take this fast forward thing. And to the extent that we are able to fast forward a cost belief, what is that worth?
Yeah.
You have to be able to count it.
And if we bring it into when the world is not in a fast forward, if we can bring this into our practice of, you know, when we look at the value agenda and so on, when we talk about aligning on the value agenda, it's going to have a whole new meaning to us. These workshops have, because the COVID workshop or the rapid mobilization workshop is a value agenda workshop.
Yeah.
And we're exposing all of this misalignment. We're exposing it. Maybe you're right, Sumit. It's the cost of misalignment. And it is fundamental misalignment. And to the extent that you can shatter a belief, you get a fast forward.
And I was just thinking, guys, in this cost of misalignment, I think there are 3 drivers of this cost of misalignment that come to my mind. And I think we have currently hovered over 2 of them. So the 3 big drivers, I think, of this misalignment, number 1 is a set of beliefs that highly successful leaders will have. Optimistic beliefs, the ability to, you know, bend the world.
And shape the curve, yeah.
Shape the world by the force of your will has been a huge source of success. To me, that is a source of, I would say, misalignment. The second one, as we said, is very, very different and divisive demands on the ecosystem at fast pace. Okay. I think that those 2 we have talked about. I think there's a third piece here, which is the misalignment of incentives. So what are the incentives of a political leader to open or reopen the economy? And sometimes re-election versus safety versus some, you know, could be an incentive which drives a certain action. What are the incentives of a CEO, an owner, an employee? And I think there is something in the game of incentives, because I don't think, as a human capital practitioner, this misalignment has to become only a software issue, which is let's get people to talk, make these things visible, and, give it speed. I think there are some hardware elements that have to be looked at. And incentives is one of them. I think ways of working, and I'm moving into the solution space, ways of working.
Yeah, that's fast forwarded. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were running your company in a command and control hierarchical way with a board which talked to their people, and you now need to suddenly move to a, innovation hackathon kind of energy and talk to 50 people together and, create a war room energy. That's a hardware solution, to this thing that you've gone from, a peacetime bureaucracy to a war room energy. So I actually think what is interesting here and what I'm looking forward to in the next few weeks is we've touched upon something which in our practice of taking talent, organization, energy, all the things that we have worked with for 30 years in HR, but connecting them to value. I think in COVID, we have found something about looking at alignment and connecting it to value. There are these three drivers, I think, of misalignment, which is around the divisive demands, which is around the CEO beliefs or the beliefs of the big beliefs of the people, and probably things like incentives. And I think what would be really interesting looking forward is, hey, what should we do about this?
Yeah.
Both from the hardware side and the software side, not just from the let's all talk to each other and make sure that we are aligned. I think there are specific things you can do to sort of move forward on that.
But, talking about, and I know we're at the top of the hour, but I just want to make one comment. If you're talking about the fact that we are not robots and we're human beings. Shocking. Yeah. But what inspires us is much more powerful. And so I think with all of this, at least for me, if I'm a microcosm for many other people, human beings, while I'm seeing all this, I also want to look at that opportunity. That's what gives me energy. So if I'm, to read trends, to say that innovation is going to happen differently, or the fact that women leaders for the first time will have a more, a fair playing ground because they might not be willing to travel as much. So when I see that is much more motivating for me to see all the positive things that can come out of this whole crisis. And I force myself every day to look at that alpha opportunities, even for my own business. Because I need both. I need to, yes, look at cash and costs, but I also want to be highly energized with something which I believe is good for the world. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, I think that to me, there are two things that have come out of this conversation that are potentially explosive in a positive sense. One is this notion of the fast forward, and that when a crisis hits, that some of these basic beliefs and rules of living, rules of managing get shattered, and it creates the opportunity for fast forward. It is a speed thing that is like, you went to warp speed, just that kind of mental picture I get. Then the second thing is, Sumi, this thing about the cost of misalignment and the drivers of it. And I couldn't help myself, and maybe it's us being a slave of our own thinking. As you were going through and describing, there are these beliefs that sit in the person. And then there are these divisive demands at fast pace that are coming in. And it takes me, and then there are the hardware elements like incentives. And I couldn't help myself. I went to the Roll Talent card. And I said, wait a second. Divisive demands sounds like jobs to be done. Beliefs sounds like talent risk. Incentives and decision rights sound like role risk. And so can we somehow, and this is like this COVID specific role talent card. Is there something here that we have in that CEO role? The risk is not just with the CEO. It is that their role has gone into fast forward. Whoa! And therefore, the demands on them, the jobs to be done have become much tighter, much more focused. And the thing that underpins, we're not going to change them in this period. So what is the talent risk that we have? It's their beliefs. It's the rules that they're using to decide how they're going to spend their time. And what is the role risk? The role risk is we have created a misalignment of incentives, and we probably also have a decision rights problem, because what happens, the decision rights get sucked up like hell, right out of the CEO, up to the PMC. You can't decide this until that, and you can't decide that until this. And we've completely changed these roles, and it as a result of the fast forward.
I think the thing which I'm working out with Sandy on this.
I'm sitting here going,
I agree. And I think
it's interesting that as human beings, we need a frame, right? So look at what Sandy did just now. He went to a frame. I just find that fascinating, because that's exactly what hopefully we are trying to give through that exercise in alpha or whatever, is give people a frame. I love that.
I think what I'm working out with, and I completely agree with you, Shefali, you need a frame to make sense of the world. And, there's a little bit of a pop that I get. I think I'm walking out of this discussion saying, if I use your Six Sigma analogy, I think the last 4 weeks and 23 companies and 250 meetings have been about making the defects visible. We have made this defect of alignment from an intuition. We have made the defect visible in full living technicolor. As I look forward, I think we got to do something about this, and of course, fast. Of course, fast, because the cost of misalignment is huge. So that's what I would say, Sandy and Shefali, I'm looking forward to, because I think as we think about this misalignment, we understand the drivers around the beliefs, around the demands, around the incentives. I think it's time to pivot to the so what, and do it in an energy efficient, ecological, precision manner, as opposed to some giant thing that nobody has the time for, right? Imagine trying to solve a time to value problem by sucking time from people. That just sounds crazy, right? That just sounds crazy. So I think that should be the fun task as we look forward here, saying, I've understood the cost of alignment and where it comes from. It's time to do some value coaching, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
If you think of the role of the CEO just went into this fast forward world.
Yeah. And I think this point about time to value, I mean, yes, should we run engagement survey to see who's misaligned? Should we try and coach the CEOs? It's a slow path to value in today's world. Like, you have to come up with a Formula One high-speed precision version of solving this.
But I genuinely feel, to me, this is a belief. So I have to say that I own up to the fact that I have silly beliefs. But I'm a big believer in the fact that the old paradigm of leadership is going to change. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that no one person has all the things we're asking from them. So the fact that Keach will have to be, I mean, the conversation is, okay, you are not going to be able to move some of this, but complement yourself with somebody and almost think about two people leading this organization than one. You know, and I have to say that this paradigm of leadership, the one we use for all our work globally, is a very Anglo-Saxon definition of leadership. It's leading from the front. That's not the, so the Asian philosophy is herding from the back. The definition of leadership itself is different in different parts of the world. And I'm thinking maybe there is a paradigm shift on what is a leader? Maybe it's two people instead of one.
I think it's absolutely possible, because if you think about the world where you say, I think one person, my sense is going to get overwhelmed by all this. I think leadership, maybe, I don't know if it's true, but I think you might be onto something, that it might become a team sport.
These couple of things that coming out of this, these are big, big things. We got to make hay on this fast forward. When those beliefs get shattered and the thing goes fast, you have to take advantage of it. And then this thing about this real cost of misalignment. And I think there are software, hardware, role, talent, you know, there are real risks in this. And this incentives thing. And if we can find a way to do a role talent card super light, super fast, if we can find how to, you know, do that, because right now people are not going to slow down as much as we want them to on it.
Yeah.
And provide a useful thing that helps people, you know, through this.
But very exciting, I have to say.
Very, very.